The big debate in the medical community is the coronavirus airborne, a major acquisition in Silicon Valley, and Kanye for president. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Monday, July 6th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Jill, good morning. How was your long weekend? Good?
It was very nice. I feel like I did what everyone did, which is watch Hamilton and complain about the fireworks. What about you?
Why is everyone talking about Hamilton? Is it's because it's streaming now? Is that it?
Because it's now on Disney Plus. Yeah.
I see. Okay. It's like like the play is on Disney Plus. Like they filmed the play.
They filmed an actual show, so there's an audience, and it is as good. Like, I get what the hype is. It's
Oh, yeah?
absolutely amazing. And I watched with closed captioning, so you could see, like, you just know all of the lyrics. Like, you can exactly read what they're saying. I mean, Lin-Manuel Miranda is, I've always known he was a genius, but next level. And these lyrics and just the understanding of what happened, I highly recommend watching.
Okay, I do. Yeah, I really do need to do that. Now, I don't have the excuse. I guess no one has the excuse now of, like, no one wants to pay $500 to go see it, right?
But yeah, it was like $1,000, and then he wasn't even in it anymore. So it's incredible. All right, Carlo, let's get to the news. New York City, which was once the epicenter of coronavirus in this country, is entering phase 3 today, although there's going to be no indoor dining allowed. Personal care services like nail salons and spas will be allowed to reopen. But New York and New Jersey are seeing a small uptick in new cases. The new epicenters, there's not just one anymore in this country. Texas, Florida, Arizona, attributing explosive growth in cases to reopening too early. Hospitals are starting to fill up in those states, Texas, Florida, Arizona. The fear, of course, is that the death rate will also start to climb. We know, though, that the death rate is a very lagging indicator, because even if people go to the hospital, you can be sick in the hospital for weeks, unfortunately, before you either get discharged or pass away. Right. On a separate note, New York City continuing to have one of the most violent summers in decades. This weekend, on just Sunday alone, 9 people killed, 48 were shot. Again, 24 hours, a really violent weekend in New York City. 63 people were actually wounded by gunfire, and several officers also had to dodge bullets. I'm quoting from Anthony DiLorenzo, who's a reporter over at Pix 11.
Yeah, back to what you said earlier, Jill. I think if anyone reads one thing today, read the story in the New York Times about coronavirus airborne transmission. So there's this group of 239 scientists from around the world who have written this open letter to the WHO, urging them to acknowledge this growing body of evidence that suggests the virus is airborne, which we've talked about in the past, and can infect people more easily than they originally thought, just when it comes to indoor activities, especially when there's poor ventilation. Jill, I know this has been sort of like a pet issue of both you and I. The WHO says right now pretty much like sustained face-to-face exposure is the predominant way in which you're going to get COVID-19, which is probably true. But they're sort of missing the point here that there's these there's more evidence coming out that these really small droplets, especially when they get into the air circulation, are also a problem. And this goes back to one of these big communications issues that we saw when it came to masks and a lot of other stuff too, right? The WHO, I think they mean very well, but they are slow to adapt to new evidence, which we've seen. They're sort of very rigid in their thinking. So they're like, we don't really know if these small droplets are going airborne through the vents and the air conditioning and whatnot. Therefore, we're not going to acknowledge it. And that's an issue that I think really needs to be dealt with. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this article. You should just read it in the Times today, because it speaks to one of the things we've talked about for a long time, which is just like we're kind of learning as we go, right? And we need to be, I think, as a population, we just need to be better about acknowledging, new information as it comes up, even if it's not 100%. Science is very rarely 100%, right?
I mean, it's also there's a lot of implications when we talk about getting back to work and getting back to school, right? You know, we need to know what we've learned about how it spreads and how we can do all of these things safely. Andy Slavitt, who I do quote occasionally on this podcast, he was a health official under the Obama administration. He wrote on Twitter, and I recommend his feed, whether you agree with him or not. He provides a lot of color on some of the coronavirus stats that we get. He writes, by now every American should have access to N95 quality masks. Every day that passes is a scandal and an epic failure of indifference of our government. You know, you and I didn't agree necessarily on the masks. In the beginning, right, when all the health officials were saying, you don't need masks. And you know what? And that is not necessarily a Trump thing. That is there is a lack of credibility on the part of the CDC and even Dr. Fauci, who originally said you don't necessarily need masks. The fact that they were saying it, knowing that even a homemade mask could probably help, and we're just kind of saying it to downplay the need because they wanted to make sure that health officials had N95 masks. I mean, it's really unacceptable, but the fact that we're this far into it and we're still seeing testing shortages and we're still having mask shortages and, you know, hospital officials are still struggling to get PPE. And we forget regular Americans, you know, it wouldn't be crazy to think that the wealthiest country on the planet could provide N95 masks for its citizens. I mean, that's not like the craziest ask.
Well, you know,
think about what that would do.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that should have happened immediately when you look back on this, which I think everyone will agree on eventually, or maybe not everybody, but everything should have been nationalized from the beginning. You know, one of the reasons why this was such a colossal, you know, mess up from day one is that it was just it was like everyone doing everything for themselves, right? The mask stuff should have been nationalized, the testing should have been nationalized, the antibodies testing should have been nationalized, but, you know, that was never going to happen, at least under this president, right?
Also, I do want to just update. This is a heartbreaking update. We've talked about this story a lot. You know that Broadway star Nick Cordero, he has now died of complications from COVID-19. He was just 41 years old. His wife, Amanda Klutz, had been updating fans on his condition for 95 days since he was first hospitalized. In addition to Klutz, Cordero is survived by their 1-year-old son, Elvis. Absolutely terrible.
Just so terrible. And just thoughts with that family. I mean, if there's anything to take away from that, it's just that, you know, this virus is not just a virus of the elderly, right? I mean,
no.
You know.
And did you see the pictures from this weekend? I mean, there's going to, I think, most likely be a big uptick in cases in New York and elsewhere. I mean, I don't know if you saw the pictures of Fire Island, then a beach in Michigan. People were out and not social distancing and like really partying this weekend. And I don't know. That's just
I think it'll be interesting to see. I think that it'll be in the same way that we thought that there were going to be a big spike in cases after the protests, and there weren't. I mean, hopefully we don't get it, and it's more evidence that outdoor gatherings are far safer than indoor. Because I have seen a lot of the stuff on social media, but I haven't seen like a lot of stuff of people inside, which I think is one good thing, right?
You make a great point. I mean, look, there was very little mask wearing, at least in the images that I saw, but perhaps you're right. Perhaps even so, the fact that it's all outdoors, you're correct. Maybe we won't see an uptick.
Hopefully.
But I am, you know, it's July 6th right now. This was July
we'll
4th.
I guess
we'll talk about it in a couple weeks. President Trump, meanwhile, basically took a little test drive of his new re-election message over the holiday weekend. He warned about a, quote, new far-left fascism rooted in monument vandals who want to, quote, end America. He had two pretty divisive speeches. The president only briefly mentioned the coronavirus pandemic. He spoke at Mount Rushmore and also at a White House Independence Day events. He also said about 99% of people who get coronavirus is not a big deal. And a couple of journalists were pressing the head of the FDA on that. And it doesn't look like any health officials want to back up that claim at this point.
Yeah, well, nor should they, because it's not true. Like I mean, it's not true that 99% are no big deal. Um, Jill, you and I have both talked about how the statue thing is clearly going to become this big wedge issue for the election, and you're seeing that already, right? This is what Trump is trying to do with these speeches over the weekend. I mean, you'd think that right now, like you'd give a speech trying to like bring the country together on its birth. I don't know. Why would you think that actually? Like, it's just, why would you think anything anymore? But back to the statue thing, protesters did topple a Christopher Columbus statue in Baltimore's Little Italy over the weekend, which I think probably helps President Trump's message. But the one thing that he has a problem with is the the party nominee is Joe Biden, right? And I mean, even though you don't see a lot of him on purpose, that's the fact. And it's the sort of like subtle brilliance of Joe Biden being the Democratic Party nominee is that nobody is going to buy this idea that this old man who has been an establishment politician in this country for like 100 years is some sort of crazed left-wing radical. And that's what they're trying to paint him as. And I just don't think it's going to stick. It isn't sticking. Just look at the polls, right? You can clearly see that Trump and his people are flailing, I think, when it comes to trying to define Joe Biden this way. A few weeks ago, Eric Trump, one of the sons, posted a picture of Joe Biden on Instagram with the caption, "Happy Mother's Day." It's like,
Meaning
really?
what?
Like he's a girl, I guess. Like, come on, man. Like, I expect better memes out of these people at least. But I just think that that's very indicative of the point that I'm trying to make, which is that they're having a very hard time painting him with this brush, right? Joe Biden is a known quantity. He's been around forever. He was the vice president. It's not like he was not some sort of radical leader then. And he's not going to be a radical leader as president. It's just not going to happen.
Meanwhile, the push to get the Washington Redskins to change its name and mascot gaining significant steam. The front office now saying that it will undergo a thorough review of the team's name. The Redskins owner, Dan Snyder, who's been called the most hated man in football, has come under renewed pressure from fans, players, and sponsors to retire the moniker that's long been derided as racist. Baseball's Cleveland Indians, they could be next. The team's manager came out and said that he supports changing the name and mascot as well.
One of my favorite headlines from the Redskins thing is an old one from The Onion, which is Washington Redskins to change their name to DC Redskins, which always makes me laugh. But some of the names that are in contention that I've seen are the Red Hawks, the Senators, the Warriors. I think anything political is just stupid. Like they shouldn't do any of that. But Red Tails, I think, is the one that I like, which is a nod to the Tuskegee Airmen. So we'll see. I think anytime you have a company or an organization say like something is under significant or under a thorough review, like they're going to change the name. It's just a matter of time now.
It seems like in this case, it's just it's more the corporate sponsors that have finally come out and just said enough, like FedEx and some of the bigger sponsors of these teams are behind
Money
it.
talks.
Exactly. Staying on the sports front, we're getting closer to baseball season, and it's already kind of started. Teams are reporting the workouts over the weekend. By the way, not gone smoothly. At least 38 players and personnel have tested positive for the coronavirus as of Friday. And that was just the first round of results. Two more vets, David Price and Felix Hernandez, saying that they're going to opt out of the season. And Yankee pitcher Masahiro Tanaka is recovering in the hospital after he got drilled in the head with a line drive during a socially distanced practice.
I didn't mean to laugh there, but it was just sort of like these because usually they're in these like huge training facilities, right? And now they're basically doing it in their stadiums and in the bullpens and on the field, and it's just kind of a mess. But also I
didn't
NBA,
realize that. So they don't have as much room to practice.
Yeah, right. They're all
that's a
basically
disaster.
on the field, right? So it's like a disaster waiting to happen. Meanwhile, the NBA enters the bubble this week. I think in the next couple days down in Orlando ahead of their season. Two teams just shut their practice facilities in the NBA over positive test results. This is just a mess, Jill. We're trying to do this. I understand why we are, and I understand people really want sports to come back, but we're trying to do this without the virus being under control. And it's the same thing as with the economy reopening. Like, you got to get the virus under control first. You cannot, Mother Nature doesn't care if you want to have a baseball season. Like, it's just, I just have such a bad feeling about the sports stuff.
America?
Yeah, America too.
Some business news. Uber expected to announce today that it is buying Postmates for $2.65 billion, all stock deal. Uber's been trying to expand its food delivery business as its core ride-hailing service has suffered during the pandemic.
Yeah, they tried and failed to buy Grubhub a couple of weeks ago. So they've been in talks with Postmates ever since. It looks like the plan, according to the reporting in Bloomberg, is that they would combine Postmates with Uber Eats, which makes sense. But remember, neither of these companies, by the way, has ever made a single dollar in profit.
Uber or Postmates?
Yeah. I don't think any of the delivery companies ever have, but
I don't
Uber
even know. Okay, can I just explain something? Can you explain something to me? Because I don't understand how the delivery companies aren't making money, because their costs, they take like 30% of
I don't really get it either.
Right, so like just say you order a pizza and whatever, dinner for $20, and you do it through Seamless, the restaurant gets only, gets like 60% of it or 70% of it, and then Seamless or whatever takes 30%. How do they not make money off that?
I've always wondered that with these software
what
companies,
are their
because
costs?
they don't have any overhead, right? I mean, they barely pay the delivery people. I think it just has to do with these companies, like they have to grow so fast, so they spend all of this money on marketing and expanding. But it's a good question. I don't really know the answer, because you constantly hear about how none of these companies make any money, and it's like, well, what is going on over there? Yeah,
I mean,
agree.
they have so much of my money. I mean, especially when I was living in the city before coronavirus, it's a little pathetic how much I was ordering off of Seamless.
Yeah,
and I thought, here I'm thinking I'm doing a good job and I'm giving my money to local businesses.
No, it's good.
But no. Okay, Carlo, let's investigate why they can't make money and report back. And finally, Kanye West set social media on fire over this weekend when he announced on Twitter that he's running for president supposedly this year. Kim Kardashian gave her husband a retweet. Elon Musk getting in, replying, "You have my full support." Given the obstacles to getting on the ballot, though, this late, many think this is perhaps a publicity stunt. Well,
Yeah,
Carlo,
it
what
is.
do you think?
Yeah, of course. Like, don't fall for it. He missed the filing deadline in a bunch of states already. So even if he wanted to actually do this, I don't think it can't really happen. Or he'd have to have a serious operation ready to roll, which I suspect he does not have. I mean, yeah, Kanye West, man, like, it's the age-old question. This guy, what happened to you? Like, you put out two of the greatest rap albums back to back, and then he married a Kardashian, and he lost his mind, and it's just kind of sad. And I know that he was sort of like off the rails before he met Kim Kardashian, so maybe I shouldn't blame it entirely on her. But back then, he was at least putting out good music. So I for one, was able to to give him a little more runway in his antics. But now there's really just there's no excuse, in my opinion.
What is Elon Musk's excuse? Like coming
I
out
think
and
they're friends now. They're buddies now.
They
like
are. They
tweeting at each
posted a
other.
picture. I know.
Yeah.
But for all of his craziness, Kanye just signed that deal with The Gap, which I think is going to be super successful. So
Yeah, that's true.
we're all still falling for it, for
That's
whatever
true.
it's worth.
What do I know? Yeah, but I mean, Kanye, put out a good album and then do whatever you want.
Okay, I think I could back that up. And I think back, and some of the music from my youth are these great collabs between Kanye and Jay-Z, and just Kanye in general. Some of his albums, to your point, so good.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, that's what you need to know for Monday, July 6th.
All right,
Thank you
folks.
for listening.
See you later.